So in this video, I want to talk about what you should be looking out for in an interview. What should be red flags for you? And this is one of the things I talk about or discuss a little bit in my book, but just as important as fit is to those companies, fit should be equally important for you. So what should you look out for, and what are some of the red flags? So I think the first thing you have to take into consideration, and again, I go into a little bit more detail about this in my book, but I think the first thing you should take into consideration is this person just not a good interviewer, or is this a reflection of how they manage and who they are as a manager? Now, this is important because it's true, not everybody who is in a managerial position is going to be good at interviewing. And oftentimes it's not a regular part of their job, if that makes sense, but it's just something they have to do every now and then. So it would make sense that they would not be the greatest at interviewing because it's not a core function of their role. It's just one aspect they have to do every now and then. But I do think in an interview setting and situation, there are certain things that can tell you a lot about who that manager is and how they manage. There are just certain basic things that most people who have decent interpersonal skills will know how to do. And in my experience, I have found that the best managers are the ones who have at least average or excellent interpersonal skills. So that's something, these are just a couple things to take into consideration. The first thing you should, I think, look out for is, the first red flag is if that person is cutting you off or cutting you short. Now, a lot of the times, they're not going to know how far you've traveled to be at that interview. They may or may not understand that, but you have committed a certain amount of time to be there and to be present in that interview. You have traveled, whether it's 10 minutes or 60 minutes, you have traveled some distance, you have put yourself together, you have made sure to be there on time and to be fully present. And if that employer, just as much as you should respect their time, they should respect you too. And if they're constantly cutting you off or cutting you short, in my opinion, that's very disrespectful to you as a job candidate. Someone who interrupts you while you're speaking, that's a major red flag, or doesn't let you finish. And I've had that happen to me in interviews before. And even whether or not you are running on or running long, it is a little bit rude and disrespectful to cut somebody off who's there for a job interview. And again, that could be a reflection of maybe they don't know how to interview people, but a lot of the times I feel like that's kind of a basic human thing, that you should let someone finish their thoughts and what they're saying, especially in an interview context. And they should know and understand that as an interviewer. So I think that can be a major red flag if they are cutting you off. The other thing you have to decide or try to figure out is, why are they cutting you off? Are they cutting you off because that's a reflection of who they are as a manager and how they manage? Or are they cutting you off or because they're short on time or they're really busy? A lot of the times people will just tell you that, or you can know that. And that would be the considerate thing to do, to tell you, hey, like we have to wrap this up, or we have a meeting soon. But someone who's constantly like looking at their watch, they're not really paying attention to you, that's just not very respectful. And when you're in a presentation, when you're watching a presentation, even as an audience member, those are pretty basic things. So if they don't know that, then I would definitely look at that as a red flag. The reason why this is important to look out for is because a lot of the times, even when there are multiple interviews, think about it this way. A work year is 2,080 hours, right? So you're basing the next 2,080 plus hours of your life on a 4 to 6 hour interaction with a company or with a manager. And that time might even be could even be significantly less if there's only one interview, so, or one interaction with that company. So that's why it's important to look out for things and consider fit, not just for the role, but also for the company and for yourself. Another thing that can be a major red flag and be indicative of how they manage and who they are as a manager is if that interview feels more like an interrogation than an interview. And again, this can speak to the level of experience they have interviewing and how well they are at interviewing. But if that interview feels more like an interrogation, like they're just trying to get information out of you and they're really aggressive, or they're just, there's not much of a transition between one question to the next, and they're just like shooting questions at you in sort of a very rapid and aggressive manner, then that can really speak to their ability to effectively lead and manage a department as well. And that's something to look out for. Overall, just how you feel with that person and the energy you receive from them can be very telling. And that's what I'm saying. If the interview feels more like an interrogation, chances are that's a reflection of who they are as a manager and their communication and leadership style. So personally, I wouldn't want to work with somebody who is very aggressive and confrontational in nature. And if that's how they're interviewing me, if that's how they're communicating with me when they're interviewing me, I can't imagine how they would be as a manager in a professional setting. And I personally wouldn't want to work for someone who is very aggressive and combative like that, you know? And that's how that comes off sometimes when somebody has a very interrogative type of interview style. So that's something to also look out for. I think those are the top things I would take into consideration if I was interviewing somewhere, and those are important things to consider because you're basing the rest of your next 2,000 plus hours on a 1 hour interview. So I hope you found these tips helpful, and thank you for watching.